The scream that tore through the dusty morning air of Nogales, Arizona in the spring of 1878 wasn't one of fear, but of rage and anguish so raw it made every man on Main Street turn his head. Rebecca Kimball stood in the middle of the road, her mourning dress already dusty from travel, staring at the pile of ashes and charred timber that had once been her childhood home. The telegram had reached her 3 days after the fire consumed everything, 3 days after they buried what remained of her father. And now she stood alone in a town she barely remembered, with nothing but the clothes on her back, and a heart so shattered she wondered if she would ever feel whole again. Yates Parker heard that scream from inside the livery stable where he was shoeing a mare, and something about the raw pain in it made him drop his tools and walk outside despite himself. He was not a man who involved himself in other people's troubles. 28 years of hard living had taught him that caring too much only led to loss, and he had lost enough for one lifetime. But when he saw the woman standing there, her dark auburn hair falling loose from its pins, her green eyes blazing with unshed tears and fury, something in his chest constricted in a way he had not felt in years. Someone should help her, old Tom Wilson muttered from the doorway of the general store, but nobody moved. The Kimball property had always been cursed, folks said, ever since Rebecca's mother had died giving birth to a stillborn son 15 years ago. Her father had been a drunk who squandered what little they had, and now the girl was back from whatever fancy school back east she had been sent to, with nothing to show for her 22 years but a pretty face and a whole lot of anger. Yates found his feet moving before his mind could stop them. He was a tall man, lean and weathered from years working cattle and horses, with dark blonde hair that fell past his collar and blue eyes that had seen too much. He wore his gun low on his hip, not because he was a gunfighter but because this was Arizona territory, and a man needed to be ready for anything. As he approached the woman, he pulled off his hat, an automatic gesture his mother had drilled into him before consumption took her when he was 12. "Madam," he said quietly, stopping a respectful distance away, "I am sorry for your loss." Rebecca whirled on him, and he could see her hands were shaking. "Sorry you are sorry," her voice cracked. "My father is dead, everything is gone, I have nothing. Sorry does not bring any of that back." "No, madam, it does not," Yates agreed, turning his hat in his hands. "But standing in the road will not change it either. Have you got somewhere to go, someone to stay with?" She laughed, a bitter sound that had no humor in it. "If I did, would I be standing here?" She pressed her hands to her face, and Yates could see she was fighting hard not to break down completely. When she lowered them, her jaw was set with determination. "I need work. I can read and write. I can do figures. I can teach." "Town already has a school teacher," someone called from the boardwalk, and there were a few chuckles. Rebecca's cheeks flushed red. "Then I will clean, I will cook, I will do whatever needs doing." Her voice was steady now, proud despite everything. Yates studied her for a long moment. She was a beauty, that was certain, with fine features and a figure that even her mourning dress could not hide. But it was the fire in her eyes that caught him, the determination not to be broken despite the world crushing down around her. He knew that feeling intimately. "My ranch needs help," he heard himself say, and immediately wanted to take it back. He worked alone. He preferred it that way. Rebecca looked at him suspiciously. "What kind of help? Cooking, cleaning, mending? I am not much good at any of it. Pay is not great, but room and board are included." "You would have your own space in the house." He could feel the eyes of the town on them, could hear the whispers starting already. This was probably the stupidest thing he had done in years. "Why would you help me?" she asked bluntly. "You do not know me." "No, madam, I do not." "But I knew your father some, before the drink got him bad. He was a decent man once. Seems like someone should give his daughter a chance. It was not entirely true. He had known Thomas Kimball only in passing. But something about this woman called to something in him he thought he had buried long ago. Rebecca stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her mind working, weighing her options. Finally, she gave a sharp nod. "I accept, but I will not be trifled with, Mr. Parker, Yates Parker. And I am not the trifling kind, Miss Kimball." He put his hat back on. "I have a wagon out back of the livery. Give me 10 minutes to finish with the mare and we will head out." "I need to see about my father's grave first," she said quietly, and all the fight seemed to drain out of her suddenly. "Of course. I will meet you at the cemetery gate in 30 minutes. He nodded to her and walked back to the livery, feeling like he had just made either the best or worst decision of his life. The Parker Ranch was 7 miles outside of Nogales, nestled in a valley with good water and decent grazing land. It was not a large spread, maybe 300 acres, but Yates ran about 50 head of cattle and bred horses on the side. The house was simple but solid, built of adobe with a deep porch that provided shade in the brutal Arizona summers. As they pulled up in the wagon, Rebecca sat stiffly beside him, her small carpet bag clutched on her lap. She had been silent for most of the journey, lost in her own thoughts, and Yates had not pushed her to talk. "It is not much," he said as he helped her down from the wagon, careful not to touch her more than necessary. "But it is sturdy. Your room is off the kitchen. Has a good window for cross breeze." Rebecca looked around at the neat yard, the well-maintained corral where several horses watched them with interest, the small barn and outbuildings. "It looks well kept," she said finally. "You do all this yourself?" "I have a hand who comes in during calving and roundup, but mostly yes. I prefer my own company." He grabbed her bag and led her inside. The house was clean enough but clearly lacked a woman's touch. The furniture was functional and worn, the floors swept but not scrubbed, the windows dusty. The room he showed her to was small but private, with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a washstand. The window looked out over the valley toward distant mountains. Rebecca set her bag down and turned to face him. "What exactly do you expect from me, Mr. Parker?" Her directness surprised him, but he appreciated it. "Breakfast at dawn, supper at sundown, dinner if I am around at midday, but often I am not. Keep the house clean, mend what needs mending, that is it. And at night." Her voice was steady, but he could see the wariness in her eyes. "At night you bar your door if it makes you feel safer, though you will not need to. I keep my word, Miss Kimball. You have nothing to fear from me." He met her gaze directly. "I lost someone once, my wife, 2 years back. I am not looking to replace her, and I am not the kind of man who forces himself on women. I just need help running this place, and you need a roof over your head. That is the extent of it." Something in Rebecca's posture relaxed slightly. "I am sorry for your loss, as I am for yours." He cleared his throat. "I will leave you to settle in. Kitchen is well stocked. Make whatever you want for supper. I will be in the barn if you need anything." He left quickly, closing the door behind him and walking out into the afternoon heat. What in the hell had he been thinking? He had been content in his solitude, had not wanted or needed anyone around. But there was something about Rebecca Kimball that had reached past his defenses. And now she was living in his house, and he was going to have to figure out how to deal with that. In her room, Rebecca sank down on the bed and finally let herself cry. Great racking sobs that shook her whole body, releasing the grief and fear she had been holding back since that terrible telegram arrived. Her father had been a difficult man, especially after her mother died, but he had loved her in his way. And now he was gone, and she was alone in the world, dependent on the charity of a stranger who looked at her with sad blue eyes that suggested he understood loss far too well. She cried until she had no tears left, then washed her face in the basin and looked at herself in the small mirror over the washstand. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face pale. She looked like a ghost. But she was alive, and she had shelter, and she would survive this. She had to. Straightening her spine, she left the room to explore the kitchen and see what she could make for supper. The kitchen was larger than she expected, with a good stove and plenty of pots and pans. The pantry held flour, cornmeal, beans, dried beef, and various other staples. There were eggs in a basket, and she found a root cellar with potatoes and onions. She could work with this. Cooking had never been her strength, but she had learned the basics before being sent east, and she would simply have to improve quickly. She made a simple meal of beef stew and cornbread, nothing fancy but hearty and filling. As the sun began to set, she saw Yates walking back from the barn, and she set the table for two. When he came in, he looked surprised. "Smells good," he said, washing his hands at the pump by the back door. "It is simple fare," Rebecca said, ladling stew into bowls, "but it should fill you up." They sat across from each other at the worn wooden table, and the silence stretched awkwardly. Finally, Yates said, "This is good, real good, thank you. You are welcome." Rebecca ate slowly, her appetite still suppressed by grief, but she forced herself to finish. She would need her strength. "Tell me about the horses," she said finally, needing to fill the silence with something. "You breed them." Yates nodded, seeming relieved to have a safe topic. "Mostly working horses, ranch horses, some cavalry stock when Fort Huachuca has need. They are good animals, steady and smart." He paused. "Do you ride?" Rebecca shook her head. "My father never taught me. He said it was not proper for a lady." There was bitterness in her voice. "Out here, knowing how to ride is not about being proper. It is about survival. If you are going to live on a ranch, you should know how." He studied her across the table. "I could teach you if you are willing." "I do not know," Rebecca said slowly. "Horses are very large, they are. But they are not mean, not if you treat them right. Think about it." He stood and carried his empty bowl to the wash basin. "Thank you for supper. I will be up at dawn. No need for you to rise before that." He nodded to her and headed for his own room on the other side of the house. Rebecca cleaned up the kitchen, finding a strange comfort in the simple domestic task. When she finally returned to her room, she did bar the door, then lay down on the narrow bed still fully dressed. She was asleep within minutes, exhausted by grief and the events of the day. The next weeks fell into a rhythm. Rebecca rose each morning before dawn to cook breakfast, usually eggs and bacon or salt pork with biscuits and coffee strong enough to strip paint. Yates ate quickly and headed out to work his stock, and she would spend the day cleaning, mending, and trying to learn how to make edible meals. He was not a demanding employer. He thanked her for every meal, never complained even when she burned things, and kept his distance. But sometimes she would catch him watching her with an expression she could not quite read, something between sadness and longing. And she found herself watching him too, noticing the way he moved with easy grace despite his size, the way he was gentle with the horses, the way his face softened when he smiled, which was rare but genuine when it happened. One evening about 3 weeks after she arrived, Yates came in for supper and said, "Tomorrow is Sunday. Town is too far for regular church going, but if you want to go, I will take you." Rebecca shook her head. "I am not ready to face those people again, but thank you for offering." He nodded, seeming relieved. "Then tomorrow, if you are willing, I will start teaching you to ride." Fear and excitement warred in Rebecca's chest. "All right," she said finally. "I will try." The next morning dawned clear and warm, promising another hot Arizona day. After a simple breakfast, Yates led Rebecca out to the corral where a pretty chestnut mare stood watching them with intelligent dark eyes. "This is Rosie," Yates said. his voice taking on a gentle tone Rebecca had not heard before. "She is about the calmest horse I have ever known. Perfect for learning." He opened the gate and approached the mare slowly, and she immediately walked to him, nosing at his pockets. He laughed and produced a piece of apple. "She is spoiled rotten." Rebecca hung back by the fence, her heart pounding. Up close, the horse looked enormous. "I do not think I can do this." "Come here," Yates said softly. "Just come meet her first. You do not have to get on today." Slowly, Rebecca moved forward. Yates took her hand, and she noticed his palm was calloused and warm, his grip careful. He placed her hand on Rosie's neck. "Just stroke her. Let her get to know you." The mare's coat was smooth and warm under her palm, and when Rebecca began to stroke gently, Rosie turned her head and breathed softly on her, then went back to investigating Yates for more treats. Despite herself, Rebecca felt a smile tug at her lips. "She is soft." "She is a good girl," Yates agreed. He was standing close behind Rebecca now, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, smell the scent of leather and horse and sun-warmed skin. It was not unpleasant. "Horses are prey animals," he continued in that same gentle voice. "They want to run from danger, but if you are calm and steady, they trust you. Rosie here trusts people because she has never been given reason not to." For the next hour, he simply had Rebecca spend time with the mare, brushing her, offering her treats, getting comfortable being near her. His patience was infinite, his instruction clear and calm. Rebecca found herself relaxing, the fear gradually easing. "That is enough for today," Yates said finally. "Tomorrow we will keep going." He turned Rosie out into the corral and walked Rebecca back toward the house. "You did well." "I barely did anything," Rebecca protested. "You faced your fear. That is doing something." He looked at her with those blue eyes that seemed to see more than she wanted them to. "Courage is not the absence of fear, Miss Kimball. It is acting despite it." Over the next several days, Yates continued Rebecca's lessons. He taught her how to approach a horse, how to read their body language, how to put on a bridle and saddle. His hands were patient and sure as he showed her how to tighten the cinch, how to check the stirrups. And then, finally, came the day when he said, "Time to get on." Rebecca looked at the saddle perched on Rosie's back and felt her stomach clench with anxiety. "What if I fall?" "Then you fall. I will be right here." He led Rosie to the fence. "Use the fence to help you mount. Left foot in the stirrup, swing your right leg over. I will steady you." Taking a deep breath, Rebecca put her foot in the stirrup. The height seemed impossible. But then Yates was there, his hands on her waist, lifting and steadying, and suddenly she was sitting in the saddle, impossibly high off the ground. She grabbed the saddle horn with both hands. "Breathe," Yates said, his voice calm and steady. "Just sit there for a minute, get used to how it feels." Her heart was racing, but slowly Rebecca forced herself to relax. Rosie stood perfectly still, patient as a saint. Yates kept one hand on her knee, grounding her. "You are doing fine. When you are ready, pick up the reins, gently. She does not need much guidance." They spent the rest of the morning with Yates leading Rosie around the corral while Rebecca sat in the saddle, getting used to the motion, learning to move with the horse rather than against it. By the time he helped her down, her legs were shaking and her back ached, but she was grinning. "I did it," she said, and was surprised by the pride in her own voice. "You did." Yates was smiling too, a real smile that reached his eyes and transformed his usually serious face. "You are a natural." Something passed between them in that moment, something more than employer and employee, more than teacher and student. Rebecca felt her cheeks flush and looked away quickly. "Thank you for your patience." "It is my pleasure," he said quietly, and she thought he meant it. The lessons continued through the following weeks. Yates taught Rebecca how to guide Rosie with the reins and her legs, how to start and stop, how to turn. She fell twice, both times onto the soft dirt of the corral, and both times Yates was there immediately, helping her up, checking her for injuries, his concern genuine and touching. And each time, she got right back on, refusing to let fear win. As spring turned toward summer and the Arizona heat intensified, Rebecca found herself looking forward to the morning riding lessons more than anything else. It was not just the riding, though she was growing to love the feeling of freedom it gave her. It was being close to Yates, listening to his patient instruction, feeling his hand steady her when she wobbled, seeing the approval in his eyes when she did something right. She was starting to notice other things too. The way her heart sped up when she heard his boots on the porch. The way she found herself taking extra care with her appearance in the mornings. The way her eyes sought him out when she thought he was not looking. It frightened her, these feelings. She had thought her heart too broken to ever feel such things again, because there had been someone back east. Thomas Hartley, who had courted her properly for 6 months, who had asked her to marry him, who had kissed her sweetly in her aunt's garden and promised her the world. And then, 2 weeks before the wedding, she had found him with her cousin Margaret in a compromising position that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. The wedding had been called off, the scandal had been enormous, and Rebecca had been sent home in disgrace, only to arrive and find her father dead and everything destroyed. Thomas had broken something in her, made her believe she was not worthy of real love. But here was Yates, kind and patient and steady, asking nothing of her but honest work, treating her with respect and care. She did not know what to do with the feelings growing in her chest. One evening in early June, after a particularly good riding lesson where Rebecca had cantered for the first time, they sat on the porch after supper watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. Yates had poured them each a small glass of whiskey, and they sat in companionable silence, sipping slowly. "You have not asked me why I came back," Rebecca said finally, breaking the quiet. "From back east." "Figured you would tell me if you wanted me to know," Yates replied, staring out at the mountains. "There was a man," she said slowly. "I thought I loved him, thought he loved me. Turns out I was wrong on both counts." She took a sip of whiskey, welcoming the burn. "He was unfaithful. With my cousin, I was humiliated." "His loss," Yates said quietly. "Any man who would betray you is a fool." "How can you say that? You barely know me." He turned to look at her then, and the expression in his eyes made her breath catch. "I know you are brave, I know you are strong. I know you picked yourself up when the world knocked you down and kept going. I know you face your fears even when you are terrified. That is enough to know you are worth 10 of any man who would mistreat you." Tears pricked at Rebecca's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. They sat in silence for a while longer, then Yates said, "My wife's name was Ellen. We grew up together, married when I was 20 and she was 18. She was sunshine in human form, always laughing, always seeing the best in everything." His voice was rough with old pain. "Fever took her 2 years ago, 3 days from fine to gone. I buried her up on the ridge where she used to like to watch the sunset." He paused. "I thought I would die from the grief of it, thought I did not want to go on without her." "But you did," Rebecca said softly. "I did. Because that is what you do. You survive. You keep putting one foot in front of the other until one day you realize you made it through another day, and then another. And eventually, the days add up to a life again, even if it is not the life you thought you would have." He looked at her. "You will survive this too, Rebecca." It was the first time he had used her given name, and it sent a shiver through her. "I am trying. You are doing more than trying. You are succeeding." He stood, collecting their empty glasses. "Dawn comes early. We should get some rest." Rebecca nodded and rose as well. As she passed him in the doorway, he caught her hand gently. "For what it is worth, I am glad you are here. This house has felt more like a home these past weeks than it has in 2 years. Her heart hammered in her chest. I am glad too, she managed to say, then fled to her room before she could do something foolish like throw herself into his arms. Over the next weeks, something shifted between them. The careful distance they had maintained began to dissolve. Their conversations grew longer and more personal. They laughed together over meals. When Rebecca struggled with a particularly difficult recipe, Yates rolled up his sleeves and helped, his incompetence in the kitchen so profound it was comedic. When a rattlesnake appeared near the house, Rebecca did not scream but calmly got the shotgun from inside and dispatched it herself, earning a look of surprised respect from Yates. The riding lessons progressed too. Rebecca grew confident enough that Yates began taking her out on short rides around the ranch, showing her the boundaries of his land, the best water sources, the places where cattle liked to graze. She loved these rides, loved the freedom of it, the way Rosie responded to her commands, the way the vast Arizona landscape opened up around her. One afternoon in late June, they rode up to the ridge where Ellen was buried. It was a beautiful spot, shaded by a spreading oak with a view of the entire valley. The grave was marked with a simple wooden cross, lovingly carved with her name and dates. I have not been up here in months, Yates admitted, dismounting and helping Rebecca down. I used to come every day, but it hurt too much. Does it still hurt? Rebecca asked gently. Yes, but differently now, more like an old wound that aches sometimes rather than a fresh one that bleeds constantly. He stood looking at the grave for a long moment. I will always love her. She was my first love, my childhood sweetheart, but I think she would not want me to stop living because she is gone. I am sure she would want you to be happy, Rebecca agreed. Yates turned to look at her then, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. I think I am starting to be. Happy, I mean, for the first time in 2 years. He took a step closer. Rebecca, I need to tell you something. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. What? These past weeks, having you here, getting to know you, teaching you to ride, watching you become stronger and more confident every day, it has awakened something in me I thought was dead and buried. I have feelings for you. Feelings that go beyond employer and employee, beyond friendship. He paused, studying her face. If I am completely off base, tell me now and I will never mention it again. But if there is any chance you might feel something similar, I need to know, because it is driving me crazy trying to pretend I do not care for you the way I do. Rebecca stared at him, her mind racing. She could see the vulnerability in his face, the fear of rejection. And she realized that her own fear was just that fear of being hurt again. But Yates was not Thomas. Yates was honest and good and patient. Yates had shown her nothing but respect and kindness. Yates had taught her to ride, yes, but he had also taught her something more important. You have taught me to love again, she whispered, the words coming from somewhere deep inside her. I did not think I could. I thought Thomas broke that part of me. But you have shown me what real caring looks like, what respect and patience and genuine feeling look like. And yes, Yates, I have feelings for you too. I have for weeks now. I was just too scared to admit it, even to myself. The smile that broke across his face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. You mean it. You are not just saying it, I mean it. She took a step toward him, closing the distance between them. I care for you, more than I thought possible this soon after everything that happened. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and cupped her face with both hands. His palms were rough and warm against her skin. I am going to kiss you now, if that is all right. Please, she breathed. His lips met hers gently, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as she responded. It was nothing like kissing Thomas, which had always felt performative somehow, like he was going through motions expected of a suitor. This was real and honest, full of genuine feeling. Rebecca's hands came up to grip his shirt, anchoring herself, and Yates pulled her closer, deepening the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rebecca rested her forehead against his chest. His heart was racing as fast as hers. "That was," she started, but could not find the words. "Yeah," he agreed, his voice rough. "It was." He pulled back enough to look at her. "I do not want to rush you. You have been through hell these past months. We can take this slow." "I do not want slow," Rebecca said, surprising herself. "I wasted so much time with Thomas trying to be the person he wanted me to be. I do not want to waste any more time." She looked up at him. "I want this. I want you if you will have me." "If I will have you," Yates laughed, a genuine sound of joy. "Rebecca, I would count myself the luckiest man alive to have you." He kissed her again, and this time there was promise in it, a future opening up before them. They rode back to the ranch as the sun began to set, riding close together, occasionally reaching out to touch, to reassure themselves this was real. That night at supper, they sat beside each other rather than across the table, and when Yates reached for her hand, Rebecca laced her fingers through his and held on tight. "We should probably discuss practicalities," Yates said as they finished eating. "How we want to proceed." "What do you mean?" "I mean that I am old-fashioned enough to want to do this right. I would like to court you properly, Rebecca. And when enough time has passed that it is respectable, I would like to ask you to marry me if you would have me." He looked almost shy. "But I understand if you want to wait longer, if you need more time to be sure." "How long is respectable?" Rebecca asked, her heart soaring at the word marry. 6 months, a year, I do not know. I just do not want to put you in a position where people talk badly about you." He squeezed her hand. "You have already dealt with enough scandal." "I do not care what people say," Rebecca said firmly, "but I do care about doing this right, about building something real and lasting." She smiled at him. 6 months of proper courting sounds perfect, and then if you still want me, ask me again." "I will still want you," Yates said with certainty. "Of that I have no doubt." True to his word, Yates courted Rebecca over the following months with a patience and thoroughness that made her fall even deeper in love with him. He brought her wildflowers from the range. He took her on picnics to beautiful spots around the ranch. He taught her to shoot and rope, skills she proved surprisingly adept at. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, learning each other's stories, dreams, fears, and hopes. He was open about Ellen, never hiding his past or pretending his first wife had not existed, but making clear that his feelings for Rebecca were not a replacement, but something entirely new and equally valuable. Rebecca appreciated his honesty, finding she could respect his love for Ellen without being threatened by it. In turn, she told him more about her life back east, about the years of trying to fit into a society that always made her feel like she did not quite belong, about her complicated relationship with her father, about the pain of Thomas's betrayal. Yates listened without judgment, offering comfort and understanding. The ranch prospered that summer and fall. The cattle were fat and healthy, and Yates was able to sell several horses to the cavalry for good prices. Rebecca proved herself invaluable, not just as housekeeper but as a true partner. She had a head for figures and helped him organize his chaotic bookkeeping. She had good instincts with the animals, and she worked harder than any hired hand he had ever had. In September, they made the trip into Nogales for supplies, their first public appearance together as a courting couple. Rebecca held her head high as they walked down Main Street, ignoring the stares and whispers. Yates kept his hand protectively at the small of her back, radiating quiet strength. "Miss Kimball," the storekeeper said coldly when they entered. "And Mr. Parker." "Good morning, Mr. Harrison," Rebecca said pleasantly. "I have a list of supplies we need." As Yates and the storekeeper discussed goods and prices, Rebecca wandered the aisles, enjoying being in a real store again. She was examining some fabric when a woman's voice said behind her, "So the rumors are true. You are living with him." Rebecca turned to find Constance Morrison, the banker's wife, looking at her with undisguised disdain. "I work for Mr. Parker," Rebecca said evenly, "as his housekeeper." "Is that what they are calling it these days?" Constance's smile was cruel. "First you bring scandal from back east, and now you are living in sin with a man not your husband. Your poor father must be turning in his grave." Before Rebecca could respond, Yates was there, his presence solid and protective. "Mrs. Morrison, I would appreciate it if you did not speak to my future wife that way." The store went silent. Constance's eyes widened. "Your future wife?" "That is correct. We are betrothed, and as soon as a respectable amount of time has passed, we will be married. Until then, Miss Kimball is under my protection, and I will not tolerate anyone speaking ill of her. Is that clear?" His voice was mild but carried an edge of steel. "Well," Constance huffed. "I suppose congratulations are in order then." She did not sound sincere, but she walked away. Rebecca looked up at Yates. "Future wife," she whispered. "We agreed to wait 6 months before you proposed. I know, but I could not stand there and let her insult you." He touched her cheek gently. "Though the sentiment is true, you are my future, Rebecca, if you will have me." "Yes," she said softly. "The answer is yes whenever you ask." They were married on a crisp December morning, 6 months almost to the day after they met. The ceremony was simple, held in the small church in Nogales with only a handful of people in attendance. Rebecca wore a simple blue dress, as white did not seem appropriate given everything, but Yates told her she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. She believed him, because when Yates said something, he meant it. They spent their wedding night in the ranch house that had become home to Rebecca over the past months. Yates was gentle and patient, mindful that this was all new to her despite her age. And when he held her afterward, murmuring words of love and devotion, Rebecca felt truly cherished for the first time in her life. Their first year of marriage was hard work but happy. They worked the ranch together, equal partners in every way. Yates consulted Rebecca on all major decisions, valuing her opinion and intelligence. She proved to have excellent instincts for business, and under her management, the ranch became even more profitable. In the spring, they learned Rebecca was with child. Yates was overjoyed but also terrified, his memories of losing Ellen still fresh enough to cause panic. Rebecca understood his fear and was patient with his overprotectiveness, even when it became excessive. "I am not made of glass," she told him one afternoon when he tried to prevent her from riding. "Women have been having babies since the dawn of time. I will be fine." "I cannot lose you," he said, his voice breaking. "Rebecca, I cannot go through that again." She took his face in her hands. "You will not lose me. I am strong and the baby is healthy. I can feel it. Have faith, Yates." He did his best, though she knew he did not truly relax until their son was born in January of 1880, a healthy baby boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Thomas after Rebecca's father, giving her a chance to honor the man her father had been before grief and alcohol consumed him. Holding his son for the first time, Yates wept openly. "Thank you," he whispered to Rebecca. "Thank you for this gift, for coming into my life, for teaching me I could love again." "You taught me the same," Rebecca reminded him. "We saved each other." As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, the Parker Ranch continued to thrive. They added more acreage, increased their herd, built a bigger barn. But more important than material success was the family they built. Their home was filled with love and laughter, with honest conversation and mutual respect. When Thomas was 2, Rebecca gave birth to a daughter they named Ellen Rose, honoring both Yates's first wife and the horse that had helped Rebecca learn to ride. Yates suggested the name tentatively, worried it might hurt Rebecca, but she insisted. Ellen was part of your life, part of who you are. I am not threatened by her memory. I am grateful that you loved her, because it taught you how to love well. The town of Nogales gradually accepted them, though there would always be some who looked down on Rebecca for her past scandals. But most people came to respect the Parkers as hardworking, honest folk who treated others fairly and minded their own business. Yates's reputation as a fair dealer and Rebecca's obvious competence won over even some of their harshest critics. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they rode together up to the ridge where Ellen was buried, their children safely home with a trusted neighbor. The grave was well maintained, as Yates and Rebecca came several times a year to tend it. You ever regret it? Yates asked as they stood looking out over the valley. Staying here, marrying me, you could have gone back east, started over somewhere with more opportunities. Rebecca looked at him in surprise. Regret it? Yates, marrying you was the best decision I ever made. This life we have built together is more than I ever dreamed possible. She took his hand. That day you found me in the street, I was broken. I had lost everything and had no hope for the future. You gave me a chance when no one else would. You taught me to ride, yes, but you taught me so much more. You taught me to be strong. You taught me to face my fears. You taught me what real love looks like. You did the same for me, Yates said, pulling her close. I was just existing before you came, going through the motions of life but not really living. You brought light back into my world. You gave me a reason to look forward rather than back. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun begin its descent toward the mountains. After a while, Rebecca said, I have something to tell you. What is it? I am with child again. She smiled up at him. Another baby, come fall. The joy on his face made her heart soar. Truly, another baby. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing. You have made me the happiest man alive, Rebecca Parker. And you have made me the happiest woman, she replied. Their 3rd child, a boy they named William, was born in October and proved to be the most adventurous of their children. By the time he was walking, he was already trying to climb onto the horses, showing his father's natural affinity for animals. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters and dry summers, cattle lost to disease or predators, horses that went lame, the constant struggle to make ends meet that was part of ranch life. But through it all, Yates and Rebecca faced challenges together, their partnership growing stronger with each passing year. When Thomas was 8, he asked his mother about her life before the ranch. They were sitting on the porch shelling peas, and Rebecca knew this conversation had been coming. Your grandfather died before you were born, she said carefully, and I had nowhere to go. Your father gave me a job and a home when I had nothing. But then you fell in love, Thomas asked with the straightforward curiosity of childhood. Yes, then we fell in love. Rebecca smiled, remembering. Your father taught me to ride a horse named Rosie. Do you remember her? The old chestnut mare. She is still in the pasture. That is her. She is retired now, but she was the first horse I ever rode. I was terrified, but your father was patient and kind, and he helped me overcome my fear. And in the process, we realized we cared for each other. Do you still love him? Thomas asked. More than ever, Rebecca said honestly. Love is not just a feeling, sweetheart. It is a choice you make every day. A choice to be patient and kind, to work together, to forgive mistakes and celebrate victories together. Your father and I choose each other every single day, and that is what makes our love strong." Thomas thought about this seriously. "When I grow up, I want to find someone to love like that." "I hope you do, my darling. I hope you do." Years passed in the way they do, with moments of joy and sorrow, triumph and setback, but always with the steady foundation of love and partnership. Yates taught all three children to ride as expertly as he had taught Rebecca. He passed on his knowledge of horses and cattle, of reading the land and the weather, of working hard and dealing fairly. Rebecca taught them their letters and numbers, to read and write and figure, ensuring they had opportunities she had not always had. She taught her daughter to be strong and independent, to know her own worth. She taught her sons to respect women and treat them as equals. And she taught all of them that family was not just about blood, but about the people who stood by you no matter what. As their children grew toward adulthood, Yates and Rebecca found themselves with more time alone together again. They took long rides across the ranch, just the two of them, talking and laughing like they had in those early courting days. The passion between them had not dimmed with time, but had deepened into something richer and more profound. "You know what I realized the other day?" Yates said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, just as they had done countless times over the years. "It has been over 20 years since the day I found you standing in the street, looking lost and angry and magnificent all at once. Has it really been that long?" Rebecca rested her head on his shoulder. "It feels like yesterday in some ways and like a lifetime ago in others." "Do you remember what you said to me, that first day when I offered you the job?" Rebecca smiled. "I asked why you would help me. I could not understand it, and I gave some excuse about knowing your father." Yates stroked her hair absently. "But the truth was, I looked at you and saw someone fighting to survive despite the world crushing down on her. And I recognized that fight because I had been fighting it myself since Ellen died. I think maybe, even then, some part of me knew you were going to change my life." "You changed mine," Rebecca said softly. "That morning, standing in front of the ruins of my old life, I wanted to give up. If you had not come along, I do not know what I would have done." "You would have survived," Yates said with certainty, "because that is who you are, Rebecca, a survivor. A fighter. I just gave you a place to catch your breath. You gave me so much more than that." She lifted her head to look at him. "You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me love when I thought I would never risk it again. You taught me to ride, yes, but really you taught me to trust again, to believe in goodness again, to love again." Yates kissed her tenderly. "And you taught me that the heart is big enough to love more than once in a lifetime, that honoring the past does not mean you cannot embrace the future, that there is always hope, even in the darkest times." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to purple to deep blue, stars beginning to emerge one by one. Inside the house, they could hear their children, grown now but still coming home regularly, their voices raised in laughter over some shared joke. The ranch that had once been just a place for Yates to work and survive had become a true home, filled with life and love and the promise of future generations. In the years that followed, as their children married and started families of their own, Yates and Rebecca became grandparents several times over. The ranch house expanded to accommodate family gatherings, and the sound of children's laughter once again filled the rooms and yard. Rebecca took to grandmotherhood with the same fierce love she had given her own children, and Yates proved to be the kind of grandfather who slipped candy to little ones and taught them to ride almost before they could walk. Thomas, their eldest, took over more and more of the ranch operations as Yates's joints began to ache with age. But the old cowboy never fully retired. still riding out most mornings to check on the stock, still making the major decisions alongside his son. Rebecca remained his constant companion and partner, her mind as sharp as ever even as their bodies began to show the wear of decades of hard work. On their 30th anniversary, their children organized a surprise celebration, inviting friends and neighbors from miles around. The house and yard were packed with people, many of whom had opposed their marriage all those years ago, but who now recognized the depth and strength of what Yates and Rebecca had built together. Speech, someone called, and others took up the cry. Yates stood reluctantly, pulling Rebecca up beside him. "I am not much for speeches," he began, and there was affectionate laughter. "But I will say this. 30 years ago, I met a woman standing in the street with nothing but the clothes on her back and fire in her eyes. I offered her a job. She offered me a second chance at life. Everything good in my world since that day has come from the partnership we built together." "Hear, hear," voices called out. Rebecca smiled up at her husband, then turned to address the crowd. "And I met a man who showed me that not all people are cruel or selfish, that there are still good men in this world who treat women with respect and partnership rather than ownership. Who taught me that love is not about pretty words and grand gestures, but about daily kindness and steady presence. Who taught me to ride a horse and, in doing so, taught me to love again." Her voice grew thick with emotion. "I am a better person for knowing Yates Parker, and I thank God every day for the life we have built together." The celebration continued late into the night, with music and dancing and more food than could possibly be eaten. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Yates and Rebecca found themselves alone on the porch once more, their favorite spot, looking out over the land they had built a life on. "Tired?" Yates asked, though he knew the answer. The lines around Rebecca's eyes had deepened with age. Her dark hair now shot through with silver, but to him she was as beautiful as the day he first saw her. "Exhausted," she admitted, "but happy, so very happy." She leaned against him. "Can you believe we have been married 30 years? Some days it feels like just yesterday. Other days it feels like you have always been here, like there was never a time before you." He kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Rebecca, more now than ever if that is possible." "It is possible," she assured him, "because I feel the same way." She turned in his arms to face him. "You know what I was thinking about today?" "What is that?" "That first riding lesson. How terrified I was. How patient you were. How you never pushed too hard but also never let me give up." She smiled at the memory. "I thought you were just teaching me a practical skill. I did not realize you were teaching me so much more." "What was I teaching you?" "Trust, courage, that I was stronger than I thought, that I did not have to face everything alone." She touched his weathered face gently. "You gave me back myself, Yates, the person I was meant to be before life beat me down." "You did that yourself," he protested. "I just provided the horse and the space." "No, you provided the faith. You believed in me before I believed in myself." She kissed him softly. "I hope our grandchildren find partners like you, people who see their strength and help them realize it. If they do half as well as their parents did in choosing spouses, they will be fine," Yates said. All 3 of their children had married well, choosing partners they genuinely loved and respected, creating their own strong families. As the stars wheeled overhead, Yates and Rebecca remained on the porch, reminiscing about their years together, the challenges they had overcome, the joys they had shared. Their love had not been a whirlwind romance, but rather a steady building of partnership and mutual respect that had grown into something deeper and more lasting than either of them could have imagined. You ever think about how different life would be if you had not stopped that day? Rebecca asked. "If you had just walked past me like everyone else did," Yates considered this. Sometimes. But I think fate or God or whatever you want to call it was at work that day. We needed each other, Rebecca. I needed someone to remind me life was worth living, and you needed someone to believe in you. We found each other at exactly the right moment. I believe that too, Rebecca agreed. Though I will admit, in that moment I was too angry and scared to see it. I just saw another stranger in a town that had turned its back on my family. And I saw a woman who refused to be broken despite having every reason to give up. That took courage, Rebecca. Real courage. As spring turned to summer and then fall of their 30th year of marriage, Yates began to slow down more noticeably. His knee, broken in a riding accident years ago, pained him more. His breathing grew labored sometimes after exertion. Rebecca worried but said nothing, knowing her husband's pride would not tolerate fussing. One October evening, after a particularly long day helping with roundup, Yates came in pale and sweating. Rebecca made him sit down immediately and brought him water. "You are pushing too hard," she said firmly. "Thomas can handle the cattle. You need to rest." "I am fine," Yates protested, but his voice was weak. "You are not fine." Rebecca knelt beside his chair. "Yates Parker, you are the most stubborn man I have ever known, but please, please listen to me. You are not 25 anymore. None of us are. There is no shame in slowing down." He looked at her, and she could see the fear in his eyes. "If I stop, if I am not useful, what am I? You are my husband, the father of our children, the grandfather of our grandchildren. You are the man who saved me when I had nothing. You are the love of my life." Her voice was fierce. "Your worth is not measured in how many head of cattle you can move or horses you can break. It is measured in the family you have built, the life you have lived, the love you have given." Tears welled in his eyes. "I do not want to leave you. I am not ready." "I am not ready either," Rebecca said, her own eyes filling. "So you need to take care of yourself so we have as much time together as possible. Please, Yates." He pulled her up onto his lap, holding her close despite his exhaustion. "All right, I will slow down. I will let Thomas handle more, but only if you promise to tell me when I am being stubborn about it." "That I can do," Rebecca said with a watery smile. True to his word, Yates began to let go of the day-to-day operations of the ranch, content to advise and consult, but no longer trying to do everything himself. It was hard for him, Rebecca knew, to watch from the sidelines. But he adjusted, finding new ways to be useful, spending more time with his grandchildren, teaching them the things he knew, passing on the legacy of the Parker Ranch. And he spent time with Rebecca, more time than they had had together in years with the demands of ranch and family. They took slow rides on gentle horses, visited with friends, sat on the porch for hours talking about everything and nothing. They grew old together with grace and humor, their love mellowing like fine whiskey, gaining depth and complexity with each passing year. On a warm spring day, nearly 35 years after the day they met, Rebecca found Yates in the barn, stroking the nose of an old mare. It took her a moment to realize it was Rosie, ancient now, her muzzle white, her movements stiff but still possessing a quiet dignity. "I did not realize she was still alive," Rebecca said softly, approaching slowly. "She is tougher than she looks," Yates said. "Always has been. Reminds me of you." Rebecca laughed and moved to stand beside him, adding her hand to Rosie's neck. The mare's eyes were still bright and intelligent, though dimmed somewhat by age. "She was a good teacher." "The best," Yates agreed. "Patient, steady, reliable, everything you needed." He turned to look at his wife. "I am glad I chose her for your lessons. I almost picked that gray gelding, but something told me Rosie was the right choice. She was perfect." Rebecca rested her head against Yates's shoulder. "Remember how scared I was that first day? I thought you were insane for thinking I could learn to ride. I knew you could do anything you set your mind to. You just had to believe it yourself." They stood in comfortable silence, two old people reminiscing, their hands linked together on the neck of the horse that had, in a way, brought them together. Rosie dozed contentedly, pleased by the attention. "You know what I think about sometimes," Rebecca said. "What my life would have been like if I had married Thomas Hartley, if he had not been unfaithful, if I had gone through with that wedding. Do you regret that it did not work out?" There was no jealousy in Yates's voice, just curiosity. "Not for a single second. I think it was the greatest blessing of my life, even though it felt like a curse at the time." She looked up at him. "If I had married Thomas, I would have lived a comfortable but empty life back east. I would never have known real partnership, real love, real purpose. I would never have become the person I am now, and I would never have known you." "I think about Ellen sometimes too," Yates admitted. "Not with sadness anymore, but with gratitude. I loved her deeply, but we were so young, and we never faced the kind of challenges you and I have faced together. I do not know if our love would have deepened the way ours has, or if it would have stayed sweet but shallow. I hope it would have deepened, but I will never know." "You can love two people completely in different ways," Rebecca said. "Your love for Ellen does not diminish your love for me, and my acknowledgement that Thomas was wrong for me does not mean what we have is less precious. If anything, it means we both know how rare and valuable this is." Yates pulled her close and kissed her, a gentle kiss full of decades of shared life. "I love you, Rebecca Parker. Thank you for 35 years of being my partner, my lover, my best friend. I love you too. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for teaching me to ride. Thank you for teaching me to love again." They left the barn together as the sun began to set, their steps slower than they once were but still in perfect sync. The ranch stretched out around them, prosperous and peaceful, a testament to their years of hard work. The house ahead was lit with warm light, and they could see through the windows their family gathered inside. 3 generations of Parkers brought together by the love of 2 people who had found each other when both were lost. That night, lying in bed with Rebecca curled against him, Yates thought about all the things that had brought him to this moment. The loss of Ellen that had nearly destroyed him, the lonely years of just existing. That fateful morning when he heard a scream and made the decision to approach an angry, frightened woman instead of walking away. Every choice, every moment, every twist of fate had led him here, to this bed, with this woman, surrounded by the life they had built together. "Thank you," he whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Rebecca's voice was sleepy. "For saying yes. For taking a chance on a lonely cowboy, for building this life with me." She squeezed his hand. "Best decision I ever made." The years continued to pass, bringing with them the joys and sorrows inherent to a long life. They lost friends to age and illness. They celebrated marriages and births among their growing family. They watched their grandchildren grow and thrive, carrying on the Parker name and legacy. Rosie passed peacefully one night in her sleep, and they buried her on the ridge near Ellen's grave, Yates insisting that the mare who had helped him find love again deserved a place of honor. Rebecca stood beside him at the burial, both of them shedding tears for the gentle horse who had been such an important part of their story. When Yates was 73 and Rebecca 71, they celebrated their 45th wedding anniversary with their children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The party was smaller than their 30th anniversary celebration, many of the guests from that event having passed on, but it was no less joyful. Thomas, now 50 and fully running the ranch with his own sons, raised a glass. "To my parents, who taught all of us what real love and partnership look like, who showed us that family is built on mutual respect, honest communication, and the willingness to face challenges together. You have given us an incredible legacy, and we are all blessed to be part of it. Hear, hear. The family chorused. Later, in the quiet of the evening, Yates and Rebecca found themselves once more on their beloved porch. It was their spot, had been for over 4 decades now, the place where they had first shared whiskey and stories, where he had first told her he had feelings for her, where they had spent countless evenings talking and dreaming and simply being together. 45 years, Rebecca said wonderingly. How did that happen? One day at a time, Yates replied. One choice at a time. One moment of choosing each other over and over again. No regrets, she asked, though she knew the answer. Not a single one, you. Only that I did not meet you sooner. But I suppose we met exactly when we were meant to. She took his hand, noting how his skin was thin and spotted with age now, his fingers gnarled from decades of hard work. Her own hands were no better, marked by time and labor. But when their fingers intertwined, she felt the same spark she had felt the first time he took her hand to place it on Rosie's neck all those years ago. I have been thinking, Yates said slowly, about mortality, about how much time we have left. That is cheerful, Rebecca said dryly, though her heart clenched with anxiety. This was a conversation they had been avoiding but knew they needed to have. I am serious. We are not young anymore, Rebecca. Neither of us knows how much time we have left. Could be another decade. Could be another year. Could be tomorrow. He turned to look at her. But whatever time we have, I want to spend every moment of it with you. I want to watch more sunsets from this porch. I want to hold you every night. I want to laugh with our family and tell stories to our great-grandchildren. I want to squeeze every drop of joy out of however many days we have left. Tears rolled down Rebecca's cheeks. That is what I want too, all of that. Then we are agreed. No more worrying about the end, just enjoying the now. He pulled her close. Because right now, in this moment, I am sitting on my porch with the woman I love, surrounded by the family we created, on the land we built a life on. And that is enough. That is everything. They sat together as darkness fell, as they had done thousands of times before. The routine was so familiar, so comfortable, that it felt like coming home. Because that was what they had given each other all those years ago, Rebecca realized. Home. Not just a physical place, but a sense of belonging, of being known and loved and valued. You saved my life, she said suddenly. That day in Nogales, I have never properly thanked you for that. You do not need to thank me. You saved mine too, we saved each other. Maybe, but I need you to know, to really understand what you gave me that day. It was not just a job or a place to stay. It was hope. You looked at me when I was at my absolute lowest, when I had nothing to offer anyone, and you saw something worth saving. You treated me with respect and kindness when the rest of the world had written me off. You taught me skills that gave me confidence. You gave me time to heal. And then, when I was ready, you loved me with a steadiness and devotion I had never experienced before. Her voice broke. You taught me to ride, Yates. But really, you taught me to live again. You taught me to love again, and I will be grateful for that every day for the rest of my life. Yates was crying now too, not bothering to hide it. And you gave me a reason to keep going when I thought my life was over. You brought joy and laughter back into this house. You gave me children and grandchildren and a family I could never have imagined. You partnered with me in ways Ellen and I never had the chance to do. You challenged me and supported me and loved me even when I was stubborn and difficult. He cupped her face in his hands. My life began the day I met you, Rebecca. Everything before was just preparation. They held each other close, two old souls bound together by decades of shared life, crying and laughing simultaneously, overwhelmed by the depth of what they had built together. Around them, the ranch was quiet, peaceful, perfect. Inside the house, their family was settling in for the night, the younger children already asleep, the adults talking quietly. This was the legacy of Yates and Rebecca Parker. Not just the land or the cattle or the horses, but the family they had created through love and determination. The example they had set of what partnership should look like. The proof that people could overcome loss and heartbreak and find joy again if they were brave enough to try. As they finally went inside, arms around each other, supporting and supported, Rebecca thought about that terrified young woman who had stood in the street in Nogales so many years ago, angry and alone and certain her life was over. She wished she could go back and tell that woman that everything was going to be all right, that a blue-eyed cowboy was about to offer her a job that would change everything, that she would learn to ride and, in doing so, learn to trust again, that she would find love when she least expected it, that she would build a life beyond anything she had imagined possible. But maybe that woman would not have believed it. Maybe she needed to live it to understand it. Maybe the journey was as important as the destination. "What are you thinking about?" Yates asked as they got ready for bed, moving through the familiar routine they had perfected over decades. "About how much I love you. About how grateful I am for every moment of our life together. About how I would not change a single thing, not even the pain that brought me to you, because it all led to this." She climbed into bed beside him, fitting herself against his side like she always did. "Thank you for finding me, Yates. Thank you for all of it." "Thank you for letting yourself be found," he replied, kissing her forehead. "Sleep now, my love. Tomorrow we will watch another sunrise together." And they did. They watched many more sunrises together, stealing every moment they could, cherishing each day as the gift it was. Their love, which had started with riding lessons in a dusty corral, had grown into something vast and enduring, a testament to the power of second chances and the courage it takes to love again after loss. When Yates passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, with Rebecca beside him as she had been for so many years, the entire county mourned. He had been a good man, universally respected, deeply loved by his family. The funeral was large, attended by everyone whose life he had touched. Rebecca stood at his graveside, dry-eyed and composed, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She had cried herself out in private, and now she needed to be strong for her family, to show them that grief did not have to destroy you, that love was worth the pain of loss. They buried him on the ridge next to Ellen and Rosie, the three graves together marking the different chapters of his life. Rebecca stood for a long time after everyone else had left, talking quietly to her husband. "You kept your promise," she said. "You loved me until your last breath. You never gave me a single reason to doubt you or regret choosing you. You were everything I needed, exactly when I needed it." She touched his headstone gently. "I will miss you every day for the rest of my life, but I will not regret loving you. You taught me that love is always worth the risk. So thank you, my darling. Thank you for 47 years of partnership and passion and profound love. Thank you for teaching me to ride. Thank you for teaching me to love again." She lived 3 more years, remaining on the ranch with Thomas and his family, spending time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling stories about Yates and keeping his memory alive. She rode occasionally, though her body protested the activity, unable to give up the freedom Yates had taught her to embrace. On a summer evening, sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Rebecca felt a sudden peace wash over her. She was 80 years old, had lived a full and rich life, and she was tired. So very tired. As the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant colors, she closed her eyes and let herself drift. They found her the next morning, peaceful and serene, a slight smile on her face. And though her family grieved, they also celebrated, because she had lived well and loved deeply and left behind a legacy that would endure for generations. They buried her beside Yates on the ridge, their graves side by side for eternity as they had been in life. At the funeral, Thomas stood to speak, his voice thick with emotion. "My parents taught us all so much," he said. "But the greatest lesson was this: love is a choice, a daily choice to show up, to be present, to put someone else's needs alongside your own." They chose each other every day for 47 years. They built a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine affection. And they showed us all that it is possible to overcome loss and heartbreak and find joy again if you are brave enough to try. He paused, looking out over the valley his parents had loved. This ranch will continue. The Parker name will continue. But more importantly, the legacy of love they left us will continue, because they taught us how to love well, how to partner fully, how to live with integrity and courage. And that is a gift beyond measure. Years later, when Thomas's grandchildren asked about the founders of the Parker Ranch, they were told the story of Yates and Rebecca, how they had met when both were broken by loss, how he had taught her to ride and she had brought light back into his world, how they had built a life and a legacy together through hard work and steadfast love, how their partnership had created a family that spanned generations. And when those great-grandchildren walked up to the ridge and saw the 4 graves there, Ellen, Rosie, Yates, and Rebecca, they understood that this was where their family's story had begun. With loss and horses, and 2 people brave enough to love again despite having every reason to protect their hearts. With riding lessons that turned into something so much more. With a cowboy who saw worth in a desperate woman, and a woman who saw goodness in a grieving man. The Parker Ranch prospered for generations, but its true legacy was never the land or the cattle. It was the love story at its foundation, the proof that second chances exist, that healing is possible, that love can bloom even in the most unlikely circumstances. It was the story of how a cowboy taught a woman to ride, and in doing so, taught her to love again, and how she taught him the same, giving him back the life he thought he had lost forever. Their story became legend in Nogales and the surrounding territory, told and retold, embellished and celebrated. But at its heart, it remained simple and true. 2 broken people found each other at exactly the right moment, chose to take a chance despite their fears, and built something beautiful that lasted not just their lifetimes but echoed through generations. And on summer evenings, when the Parker family gathered on the porch of the old ranch house, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple, they sometimes felt the presence of Yates and Rebecca, still there in spirit, still watching over the legacy they had created together. Still in love, even beyond death, bound together by the choices they had made and the life they had shared. The story of Yates Parker and Rebecca Kimball was a testament to the enduring power of love, the courage it takes to try again after loss, and the beautiful things that can grow when 2 people choose to face the world together. It was a love story forged in the Wild West, tempered by hardship, strengthened by mutual respect, and ultimately triumphant in its endurance. And it all began with a scream in a dusty street, a cowboy who decided to help, and riding lessons that taught them both so much more than how to sit a horse. It began with bravery and kindness and the willingness to be vulnerable again. It began with hope when hope seemed impossible. It began, and it never truly ended, because love like theirs echoes forever.